Short one, actually, but I brought some props with me just to illustrate the points that I'm making. The question basically is, what scope is there to fund murals, busts and statues as part of commemorating the Vote 100 and beyond and the women who made modern Cambridge projects? One of the reasons for asking this is next year Cambridge, it hasn't planned on celebrating it, but I hope it will celebrate the centenary of the appointment of our first women magistrates on this site, on the other side where the Cambridge Magistrates Courts used to be, and that was in 1920. Why is my phone ringing? Sorry. That was in 1920. That was Clara Rackham, Leah Manning, Florence Ada Keynes, Jane Harrison were all sworn in as our first magistrates. So whether that's going to be part of a 2020 celebration generally, I don't know. But one of the things I was looking at, I think particularly in terms of your art strategy, I'm just going to give you two examples here. Councillors, if I can pass those two round. That's of one of the Pankhursts, I always get the names mixed up, and the pilot, Amy Johnson. The mural you've got on the wall, the artist, I've been in contact with the artist, and he said a ballpark figure for something like that, a big mural on the side of an otherwise empty brick wall, would cost about £8,000. And here are two examples from the Cambridgeshire collection that I've commissioned a professional digital artist to have colourised, and nobody's seen these before, so this is a first. That's our first woman mayor, that's Eva Hartree. The photograph is originally from 1924, and it's been colourised. And then this one from just after the turn of the century is Eglantine Jebb, who some of you will be going to the event, the Open Cambridge events, on her survey of Mill Road. So the point I want to get across there is we've got some really, really high quality source materials to work from, and also one of Eglantine's biographers has her husband has actually produced a bronze bust of Eglantine as part of the Save the Children centenary, and has said that reproducing that bust for Cambridge City Council, if it wants it, would be relatively straightforward. And again, similar figure quoted. So I'll leave it at that.
Thanks very much for that. If you start, I'm going to put them up here so everyone can see them. And I think they've all seen them, that's good. So, did you get a response or something?
Yeah, so we're going to do a two-camera on this, so I think Tim's going to give some technical stuff and then I'm going to come in.
Okay, so use the microphone, please, Councillor. The officer's going to give a response first, and then the executive councillors. So, Tim, if you could just introduce yourself and your job title, please, before you speak.
Yes, certainly, Chair. My name is Tim Weatherfield. I'm the Urban Growth Project Manager. The availability of Section 106 funding held by the City Council for all types of future off-site public art is running down and is unevenly spread across the city, as set out in the Public Art Commissioning Report featured in the committee's agenda today. However, as set out in previous public art reports, the scope for funding public art in Cambridge, like the suggestions mentioned, need not be limited to those commissioned by the council. Developers can provide public art as part of their new developments. Other sources of funding can also be explored, for example, from businesses and other institutions in Cambridge, or from benefactors with connections to the city. The City Council has already allocated, in June 2018, £30,000 of Public Art Section 106 grant funding for a proposal from Unison to mark the 100th anniversary of the Representation of the People Act, and to celebrate the courage and resilience of the women of Cambridge. The vision for this project is to engage Cambridge residents and tell the story of women's lives and how women have contributed to the way Cambridge has developed since 1918, both politically and socially. The artist appointed by Unison will create opportunities for local residents to get involved in the development of the artwork. This reflects the rallying call from suffragette and former Cambridge councillor Clara Rackham in her speech to the National Council of Women in Cambridge in 1962 that we must remain eternally vigilant. The project is called Women at Work and is due to be completed in March 2020. Recognising that remaining off-site public art funds are limited, the Council is in the process of developing a public art strategy. This will help to make sure that suggestions for the use of off-site Section 106 funds for particular public art projects are considered in the context of other public art proposals, which are also seeking funding from the same finite resources. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Tim. So do you executive councillors want to speak now or later? Because there's another 2 minutes for Antony to ask them what he wants to. Are you ready?
Yeah. So, little pedantic point, Clara Rackham was definitely not a suffragette. She was a suffragist, difference being the suffragettes were the people who smashed windows and committed crimes of terrorism that we would call today, and were called at the time the suffragists. And Cambridge was a hotbed for suffragist activity. They were the peaceful ones, led by Millicent Garrett Fawcett. And we have some wonderful stuff in the archives showing how the two sides really didn't get on with each other. I think on a, like I said, on a more wider point, I think there is a huge opportunity for the city and also the university to get together and pool both ideas and resources to really leave a lasting legacy. And I think with that in mind, one of the ideas that I've put forward, given that we lost two of our biggest civic titans this year, Sir Mike Marshall and the late Mayor, Councillor Nigel Gawthrop, I wondered if there was something around founding an institute for local history in discussions with the estates of the two and the families of the two, and integrating some of that public art and some of those projects on the women who made modern Cambridge into that, and have something that's truly leaves a legacy for decades, if not centuries. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Anthony. I'll try and keep it brief. We were all nodding up in this corner when you started talking about celebrating those first women magistrates. We're all going, oh, that's really good. I think that's a very exciting idea. I'd like to talk to you personally about what we can do about that. And I know how much contribution you made to the Vote 100 celebration, so it would be great to chat about that. I also know that Nadine, our public art officer, is very happy to chat to you more here about not so much a public art commission, but an exhibition here or in another civic building that is able to display some of these fantastic photographs that you've got, and to give some more information and build on some of the talks you've done. And I haven't forgotten about our conversations about getting those colorised pictures up either, because I think that's something really important. Thank you too for mentioning the suffragist thing. As a history teacher, I always think it's quite important to get that right. I think the suffragettes would have been suffragists would have been terribly upset to have been called suffragettes, I think. And I do appreciate that's not down to Tim, so I just want to make that absolutely clear. But I think the other thing that is really important from what Tim was saying was, as we develop a public art policy, it gives us the chance to set some steers in that policy and to say the kind of things we want to do. Because when you get companies coming and they want to do a piece of art, they often want ideas. And if we're able to give them some guidance on this kind of thing, I think that's a really important idea that Tim has raised there. And there are some opportunities coming up, and you'll see that in the public art report. There are future projects with S106 that we still have some control over. Wouldn't want to speak for the other Romsey councillors, but I personally can't think of anything more exciting than to have a piece of public art in Romsey celebrating some of those great women like Clara Rackham who had connections to that ward. So I think there's a lot we can discuss and talk about here, and what I do want to do particularly is to thank you for keeping this on the agenda, because this is really important and we don't want to kind of forget about this. We want to keep talking about it, and thank you for making sure we keep talking about it.